He pulled up to the hospital with flowers and hope, never suspecting that within an hour, his life would split in two. Months of preparation, talks about the future, kisses on his wife's belly. All of it had been a lie. He walked down the hallway believing he was about to become a father, only to find himself cast in a tragedy where every step led deeper into betrayal, and every smile was a mask. It felt like he was entering the room to meet happiness, but he walked out a different man, because the child he had poured his soul into wasn't his, and the wife he had leaned on, trusted, loved, turned out to be the one who struck first. The court, the tests, the struggle to survive a reality he never chose, all that still lay ahead, but the pain began right there, in the moment where the first words of love were meant for his son. Not someone else's child, his own. Greetings, my friend. Before you jump into watching, take a second to check the description and subscribe to my friend's channel. He'll be so happy. Now let's go. A crisp edge lingered in the morning air as sunlight spilled across the horizon, and Blake Harrington guided his truck into the hospital parking lot, the tires snapping over a scatter of brittle leaves. Only hours earlier, he'd sped away from this very entrance after Mira's water broke. He'd gotten her settled inside, then rushed back home to collect her overnight bag and a few things they'd forgotten in the flurry. Now, with a bouquet of pale pink and white carnations beside him on the passenger seat, a mixture of eager energy and tightening nerves coursed through him. Today, he would meet his son. Catching his reflection in the mirror, he pushed a hand through his tousled dark hair. His eyes, deep set and weary from lack of rest, still held a flicker of excitement. At 33, Blake's build still spoke of a man who knew physical labor. He had stepped away from working the job sites 3 years ago when he'd been promoted to supervisor, a change that brought steadier hours and better pay, just as he and Mira were ready to grow their family. A grin tugged at his lips as he grabbed the bouquet and hoisted her bag over one shoulder. They'd spent 2 years trying for this baby. He could still see the image of Mira bursting into their bedroom, tears on her cheeks and a positive test shaking in her hands. That day had felt like the beginning of the future they'd dreamed about. As the sliding doors parted with a hiss, the clean, sterile smell of the hospital swept over him. He nodded at the front desk receptionist, someone he recognized from their countless prenatal visits, and made his way toward the elevator. His boots tapped softly on the polished floor, drawing a few side glances from staff just starting their shifts. 4th floor, he reminded himself, hitting the button. Room 412. The maternity wing was quieter than he'd anticipated, though, he supposed, not many people showed up at 7 a.m. A nurse looked up from behind the counter, her face weary but kind. She offered a warm smile. "Mr. Harrington, your wife's been wondering when you'd come. How's she doing? And the baby?" he asked, adjusting the bag's strap. "They're doing great," the nurse answered. "Smooth delivery, healthy little boy." She nodded down the hallway. "Want me to walk you there?" "I'd appreciate that." Her name tag read, Sophie. As she guided him down the corridor, she continued, "Your wife's resting, but she's awake. Baby's already been fed and is sleeping peacefully." They stopped outside a room labeled 412. "She might be a bit groggy, so try to keep it quiet. If you need help, just use the call button by the bed." He murmured his thanks, drew in a breath, and turned the handle. Sunlight filtered between the blinds, painting thin stripes across the linoleum floor. Mira was reclining against the pillows, her blonde hair spilling like gold around her shoulders. She looked worn, but when her blue eyes met his, they shimmered with warmth. "You came back," she said softly. Crossing the room, Blake placed the flowers on the nightstand and took her hand in his. "Of course I came. I brought your things too." He kissed her forehead gently. "How are you feeling?" "Tired, sore," she admitted, squeezing his fingers gently. "But happy. Really happy." A A faint sound turned both their heads toward the bassinet nearby. Blake's chest ached as he looked toward the small bundle wrapped in a blanket. "Can I?" Mira gave a slight nod. "He's yours." Blake bent over carefully, hands steady from hours of practice and watching how-to videos, then cradled the baby in his arms. The newborn stirred but made no fuss, nestling quietly into his father's chest. "Hey, little man," Blake said, his voice catching with emotion. "I'm your dad." But then the words stuck. Something shifted inside him as he studied the baby's features. The child's skin was several shades darker than either his or Mira's. The nose, the mouth. There was a different lineage in this face. His mind scrambled to reject what his eyes confirmed. His stomach lurched. His arms stiffened. "Blake?" Mira's voice came through faintly, as if from underwater. "What is it?" He looked from the infant to her, then back again. The room felt as if it were collapsing inward, the air growing thin. With slow, deliberate movements, he placed the baby back in the bassinet. Mira's voice trembled, suddenly small. "What's wrong?" He turned to face her completely. She sat tucked into the sterile white bedding, her face pale, but it wasn't confusion in her expression. It was fear. She already knew. "Who is he?" Blake asked, barely loud enough to hear. She gripped the blanket closer. "What are you talking about?" "He's not mine." "He is yours. He's our son," she said, voice breaking. Blake shook his head, a slow burn rising in his chest. "Mira, look at him. Really look. That child is not mine." Her lips quivered. "Of course he is," she whispered, though her eyes betrayed her. "How can you even say that?" "Because I can see," Blake said, his voice edged with anguish. The sharpness of it made the baby cry out. Blake kept his voice even, though tension laced every word. "That baby isn't white, Mira. You and I are. So explain how that adds up." Mira's expression collapsed as tears streamed freely down her cheeks. "Blake, I'm begging you," she choked out. "Just tell me the truth." His hands clenched at his sides, jaw rigid. "Be honest with me. Just this once," she sobbed, pressing her face into her hands. "Please. I need to hear it." "I'm sorry," she whispered, the words barely audible. "Sorry?" he repeated, the sound of it cutting him like splintered glass. "Sorry for the affair? For the lies? Sorry for making me believe, this entire time, that I was going to be a dad?" "I didn't know what to do," she cried, shoulders shaking. "It was one time, with someone from the office. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I never wanted to cause you pain." Blake felt the floor tilt beneath him. He reached for the back of a chair to keep upright. "Someone from work," he said, tasting the bitterness of the words. "When?" "Let me guess. Around 9 months ago?" Mira tried wiping her cheeks, but the tears wouldn't stop. "After the Morgan account wrapped. Everyone went to O'Malley's to celebrate. I told you I had to stay late at the office." The memory struck him like a blow to the gut. He had offered to pick her up that night, but she said her co-workers would give her a ride. He even cooked her dinner. She'd come home hours later, laughing about drinking too much. "It was Trevor. He's in accounting. We'd been flirting off and on, and I got carried away. Too many drinks." "Don't," Blake said, raising a hand, his stomach churning. "I don't want a full recap of how you shattered everything we had." "It was just one awful mistake," Mira insisted, reaching out. He stepped away. "I never saw him again after that night. It didn't mean anything." "One night," Blake echoed, letting out a hollow, humorless laugh. "And then 9 months of lies. Every single day you could have told me. When I talked about the baby. When I felt him kick. When I imagined our future. You didn't just forget to say something, Mira. You made a decision. Over and over again." "I was scared," she murmured, trembling as tears kept falling. "When I found out I was pregnant, I panicked. I thought maybe it was yours. I wanted it to be. I prayed it was. And when he came into the world, Blake said, nodding toward the nearby bassinet, and you saw he obviously wasn't mine. What then? What was the plan? She didn't respond. Her silence said everything. You were really going to let me raise another man's child, he said, the realization tearing something deep inside him. You were going to let me love him, bond with him, all while keeping me in the dark. We can still be a family, Mira said quickly. We can raise him together. He doesn't ever have to know. We can make this work. No. The word fell from his lips, solid and final. I won't sign that birth certificate. I'm not going to pretend he's mine when he's not. You don't mean that, she said, panic creeping into her voice. She sat up, wrestling with the blankets. He needs a dad. I need you. You should have thought of that, Blake snapped, venom coating every syllable. Before you slept with someone else. The words scorched his mouth, but he wanted them to wound, to leave a mark. Mira flinched like he'd struck her. Please, she wept, stretching a hand toward him again. We can fix this. We can try therapy. We can heal. Blake stared at her, dumbfounded. This isn't a cracked vase, Mira. This was our marriage, our trust, our love, and you reduced it to rubble. You can't rebuild what you completely annihilated. Her crying turned frantic, her body trembling with the weight of it. I still love you, she gasped. Please don't go. I'll do anything. He watched her fall apart, recalling all the times he'd comforted her, promised to never let go. But now there was only emptiness where his love used to be. I'm filing for divorce, he said quietly. Mira's head jerked up. Mascara streaked her tear-stained face. No, you can't. Please, Blake, just hear me out. There's nothing left to say. He turned for the door, each step weighing him down like iron. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. Wait, she cried, trying to untangle herself from the sheets and IV lines. Don't walk away. Don't throw away 5 years. I made a mistake. But I love you. Doesn't that count for something? At the door, he paused. For one last second, he looked back and met her eyes. Love without trust isn't love, he said. It's just another lie. Please, she whispered, her voice cracking. If you walk out, I'll never forgive myself. Fine. The word exited his lips like a cold snap, sharp, final, immovable. Forgiveness was off the table, now and always. He didn't spare her a last glance as he turned away, her sobs following him down the antiseptic corridor. The hospital hallway stretched endlessly, bustling with indifferent nurses, beaming new fathers, and smiling guests, none of them aware that the ground had just given way beneath him. His legs carried him on autopilot, straight to his truck. He collapsed behind the wheel, staring blankly ahead. The future he'd painstakingly envisioned had been reduced to rubble. The woman he'd built his life around had shattered it with a betrayal deeper than he could have imagined. The child he had dreamed of cradling in his arms wasn't his. Every shared hope, every whispered vow, every truth between them, it had all been a fiction. His eyes locked on the faded baby on board decal Mira had insisted on months back, clinging to the rear window. Fury surged through him. He ripped it off, crushed it in his palm, and hurled it into the nearest trash can. Then he slid back behind the wheel and started the truck. The low rumble of the engine did nothing to quell the tempest inside him. As he pulled out of the parking lot, his phone buzzed. Mira's face lit up the screen, captured during their anniversary dinner just a few months ago. She'd looked radiant then, one hand resting tenderly on her swollen belly. He'd thought she'd never looked more stunning. Now, the sight of her made his stomach churn. He muted the call and flung the phone aside. He had no destination in mind, only the urge to escape. From the hospital, from her, from the ruins of what he thought was real. The morning light spilled over the road, casting stretched shadows in front of him. Somewhere back in that building, Mira was likely still crying, maybe still hoping he'd walk back in and find a way to forgive her. and somewhere nearby, a baby, hers, not his, slept peacefully, unaware of the wreckage that trailed behind. Blake's grip tightened on the wheel, knuckles blanched. He had always believed in building things to last, homes, love, a family. But Mira had taken that belief and crushed it beneath a lie. There would be no patching things up, no mending what she had broken. The road unfurled ahead, lonely and unclear, but one thing was absolute. He wouldn't be bringing a child home. Not today, not ever. The metallic jingle of keys broke the silence as he unlocked the door to his new apartment. Unit 307, third floor, facing west. A world apart from everything he'd left behind, even if it was still technically the same city. The door groaned open to reveal the bare, unfamiliar space he now inhabited. One bedroom, sparse furnishings, empty walls that swallowed every echo. No pictures, no keepsakes, no signs of the life he used to share. 2 weeks had passed since that hospital hallway. 2 weeks of suitcase living, avoiding every call, piecing together what was left of himself. It wasn't meant to be a forever home, but at least it wasn't haunted. His phone buzzed again, for the 20th time that day. Mira's name flashed on the screen, along with that same photo from their anniversary. She'd glowed that night, hand gently resting on the belly he'd thought carried his child. That image had once meant everything. Now it turned his stomach. He rejected the call without hesitation, just as he had every time before. Let her leave another unheard voicemail. Let her send messages he'd never read. The wound was still too deep, her betrayal too raw. Even her voice felt like a knife. Then came a knock, sharp, deliberate. 3 quick taps, then 2 slower. A rhythm that once would have made him tense for different reasons. A familiar voice followed. "It's Damien. Open up." The coil in his chest loosened, if only slightly. Damien Mercer, his closest friend since college, now a high-powered divorce attorney, had been his one constant through the chaos. And if Damien was showing up unannounced, it couldn't be good news. Blake opened the door to find him standing there in full professional armor, tailored charcoal suit, crisp white shirt, red tie. His briefcase bulged with paperwork, and the worry etched on his face made Blake's stomach tighten. "You look like hell," Damien said, eyeing the wrinkled clothes and scruff on Blake's jaw. "Nice to see you too." Blake stepped back to let him in. "Beer?" "It's barely 2. Didn't say it wasn't an option." Damien exhaled and dropped his briefcase onto the counter with a thud. "We need to talk. Mira's attorney reached out this morning." At her name, Blake's jaw clenched. "She's filing for child support." The words struck like a hammer. Blake gripped the counter's edge, knuckles whitening. "She's what?" "She's claiming that since you were married when the baby was conceived and born, you're legally on the hook for support," Damien said, pulling a thick file from his case. "It's aggressive, but not—" "Don't say it's not surprising," Blake cut in, his laugh harsh and hollow. "She lies, cheats, carries someone else's kid, lets me believe it's mine for 9 months, and now she wants me to pay for it. That's not surprising?" "That's absolutely insane. The legal system gets messy with situations like this." "There's nothing complicated about it," Blake snapped, his voice echoing off the bare kitchen walls. "That baby isn't mine. That's the core of it. I'm aware." Damien's tone was level, composed, the calm of someone who'd walked this road before. "We're going to dispute it, but you need to prepare yourself. This won't go smoothly. More of a mess than discovering your wife's been lying for 9 months. More than cradling a newborn in your arms, thinking he's yours, only to see someone else's face looking back. Honestly? Yeah." Damien laid out a neat row of papers on the counter like a general preparing for battle. "We'll request a court-mandated DNA test, formally refute presumed paternity, and gear up for a long legal slog." Blake dragged his fingers through his hair, pacing the narrow space like a cornered animal. Jesus Christ. "There's something else," Damien added, flipping through the forms with a pause. Mira wants to meet. Says she prefers to talk things through before the attorneys take over. No. The word shot out, instinctual and immediate. I think it might be. I said no. Blake's tone hit like a slammed door. She forfeited her chance to talk the moment she started lying to me. A knock broke the silence, 3 quick raps, followed by 2 slower ones. The pattern was unmistakable. How the hell did she find me? Blake asked, staring at the door in angry disbelief. She probably followed me, Damien admitted, a guilty look passing over his face. She was parked outside my office when I left. Blake. Her voice came from the other side of the door, gentle, yet unshakable. I know you're in there. We need to talk. No, we really don't, he answered, jaw tight, fists clenched. From now on, everything goes through attorneys. This is madness. Her voice cracked under the weight of emotion. We're still husband and wife. You can't just shut me out. We're still married. Those words ignited something inside him. He yanked the door open, making her step back in shock. Now you care about marriage? His voice was pure acid. After all of this? She looked smaller than she had in the hospital, dressed in jeans and a sweater that might once have been his, her hair pulled back haphazardly. The dark circles under her eyes mirrored his own. I know I've hurt you, she murmured, wringing her hands, but can we please just talk? About the baby? About everything? There is no everything, Blake replied, his voice like ice. And the baby you're trying to pin on me? Not mine. You know it. I know it. And the court will confirm it. He needs a father. Then go find the one who actually is. His voice cracked like a gunshot. She winced. Why not let Trevor from accounting know he's a dad now? See if he wants to play house with you. Tears welled up in her eyes again. Trevor wants nothing to do with us. He won't even return my messages. Now you know what that feels like, Blake said bitterly. Funny how that works, huh? How can you be so heartless? A tear slid down her cheek. This isn't you, Blake. This isn't the man I married. The man you married? He stepped toward her, voice low and threatening. That man trusted you. That man loved you. That man died the second he looked into that baby's eyes and realized his whole world was a sham. It wasn't all a lie, she whispered, reaching for him. He recoiled, as if her touch might scorch his skin. 5 years, Blake. We had 5 years. That was real. Real? He echoed with a harsh laugh. Let me ask you something, Mira. All those months while you were pregnant, watching me paint the nursery, assemble the crib, talk about our future, what were you thinking? That I was a fool? That it was hilarious how easy I made it for you to deceive me? No. She covered her face with trembling hands, her body shaking with sobs. I was terrified. Every single day. I wanted to tell you, but I couldn't bear the thought of losing you. So instead, you let me believe I was going to be a father, Blake said, his voice barely above a whisper, calm but deadly. You let me imagine playing catch with my kid, going camping, doing all the things my dad did with me. You let me build a future that was never real. We can still have that, she said, her voice barely audible, hand reaching for him again. We could start fresh. We could have children of our own. Leave. Blake, please. I said leave, he bellowed, loud enough that a neighbor's door creaked open down the hall. Go raise your boyfriend's baby and stay the hell out of my life. Finally, Damien stepped forward, as always, the calm voice of logic in the chaos. I think it's time for you to leave, Mira. Any future communication has to go through our lawyers. She shook off his hand, streaks of tears smudging across her cheeks as she tried to wipe them away. This isn't over, Blake. You can't just pretend none of it happened. Watch me. He slammed the door shut with more force than necessary, his fingers unsteady as he slid the deadbolt into place. Her muffled crying filtered through the wood, but he blocked it out, just as he had silenced her calls and ignored her messages. Well, Damien said after a beat, that was rough. Blake turned a sharp look on him. You think? I'm just saying, emotions are high, and rightfully so, but we've got to move smart. Damien bent to gather the stack of documents he'd dropped earlier. The court won't care how anybody feels. They care about the law, about evidence, precedent. Then give them the evidence. Blake yanked the refrigerator door open and grabbed a beer, uncaring that it was barely noon. Get the paternity test. Prove the kid's not mine, and make sure she understands I'm not financing her lies. It's not that black and white. Then make it that way. Blake's voice was unyielding. That's why I hired you. The weeks that followed blurred into a haze of legal motions and court appearances. Every day brought some new hurdle, more paperwork, more legal maneuvers to counter. Mira's legal team was relentless, deploying every possible strategy in hopes that something would land. The first court hearing was the most brutal. As Blake stepped into the sterile courtroom, he spotted Mira seated at the petitioner's table, wearing a conservative navy dress that seemed chosen to project an air of quiet victimhood. She looked gaunt, paler than she had in the hospital, and though her face was drawn, her eyes scanned his as if still searching for a sliver of hope. All rise, the bailiff announced, as Judge Penelope Morgan entered. She was a veteran of the family court system, her gray hair and stern presence shaped by years of watching relationships unravel. You may sit, she said, thumbing through the case folder. Harrington versus Harrington, petition for child support and contestation of paternity. Are both sides present? Yes, Your Honor. Both attorneys replied in unison. You may proceed, Mr. Ramsey, the judge said, peering at the attorney over her glasses. Mira's counsel stood and straightened his tie. Your Honor, my client is requesting child support from her husband, who abandoned her and their newborn son. Per state law, any child born during a marriage is presumed to be the husband's. Mr. Harrington was present throughout the pregnancy. He helped prepare for the baby, and only denied paternity after the child was born. Objection, Damien said, rising from his chair. Counsel is mischaracterizing the facts. My client was deceived. Mrs. Harrington deliberately misrepresented the child's parentage. Objection is noted, Judge Morgan replied. Continue, Mr. Ramsey. The preliminary hearing stretched on for hours. Each side laid out their positions. Blake sat stone-faced, unmoved by Mira's quiet weeping or her lawyer's passionate rhetoric about familial duty. The judge ultimately ordered a DNA test, despite Mira's objections. Her attorney argued that the legal presumption of paternity should make the test unnecessary. 2 weeks later, the test results came in. Blake was not the biological father. But instead of conceding, Mira's attorneys ramped up their efforts. They challenged the testing lab's credentials, questioned the chain of custody, and even suggested that the sample might have been compromised. Each delay tactic only hardened Blake's stance. She's flailing, Damien told him after another grueling courtroom session. Trevor still won't take responsibility, and she's boxed in. Not my problem, Blake said, tugging at the stiff collar of his dress shirt. The suit felt like armor and a prison. She built this lie. Let her sit in it. The next hearing hit a new low. Mira brought the baby into court, an obvious ploy that backfired when Damien pointed out that the child's features made their argument stronger. Your Honor, Mira's attorney pressed. Even if biology is in question, Mr. Harrington acted as a father during the pregnancy. He decorated the nursery, made long-term plans. I made preparations for my child. Blake cut in coldly. Not someone else's. Your client misled me. Everything I did was based on a lie. But surely there was some emotional connection. Objection, Damien snapped. Not relevant. Sustained, Judge Morgan said with a sigh. Counsel, let's confine ourselves to the legal merits. Still, Mira's legal team refused to let go. They filed motion after motion, citing psychological parenthood, emotional commitment, even referencing precedents where step-parents had been forced to pay child support. It all reeked of desperation. Blake remained unmoved. Not by Mira's tears during depositions, not by her breakdowns on the witness stand, not even by the desperate, lingering looks she sent him in courthouse corridors. The final hearing arrived on a crisp autumn morning. Dry leaves danced across the courthouse steps as Blake ascended them, Damien at his side. It had taken months of struggle and grief, but this time it would finally end. Mira was already in her seat when they stepped into the courtroom, wearing a simple black dress that only seemed to drain more color from her already pale face. The baby wasn't with her this time. A small mercy, Blake thought grimly. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Morgan," the bailiff called out, and the familiar formalities began once again, one last time. Judge Morgan ascended the bench, took a measured glance at the paperwork spread before her, and looked sternly at both parties. "I've reviewed the documentation and legal arguments submitted by each side," she began evenly. "Counsel for Mrs. Harrington has presented multiple theories of liability, while Mr. Harrington's legal team has remained firm in asserting paternity fraud. Before I issue my ruling, Mrs. Harrington, is there anything further you'd like to say?" Mira stood, her hands trembling at her sides. "Your Honor, I've made grave errors. But Blake and I were building something, a life, a future. One poor decision shouldn't destroy all we had." Before Judge Morgan could respond, Blake's voice cut in, steady and clear. "May I speak, Your Honor?" With a nod of permission, he rose. Mira's gaze clung to him, but he kept his eyes fixed on the judge. "That poor decision she mentions," he said, "wasn't a momentary lapse. It was followed by 9 months of continuous deceit. Every day, she chose not to tell me the truth. Every talk we had about becoming parents, every plan for the nursery, she let me live inside a lie. That wasn't a mistake. That was a betrayal she carried out day after day." "Mr. Harrington," Mira began, her voice strained, but he turned toward her, his words turning colder. "You want to talk about what family means? Family starts with honesty. The moment you were with another man, you shattered that. And instead of owning up to it, you buried it under months of lies. Now you expect me to shoulder responsibility for a child born from those choices? That isn't justice, it's just more betrayal." A heavy silence followed, stretching through the room like fog. Judge Morgan studied them in silence for several moments before speaking at last. "Having considered the evidence, including the DNA report and Mrs. Harrington's acknowledgement of infidelity, the court finds no legal basis to require Mr. Harrington to provide financial support for the child. The petition is denied. Furthermore, the court grants Mr. Harrington's divorce filing on the grounds of adultery. This marriage is officially dissolved." Mira let out a quiet, broken sob that echoed off the courtroom's hard surfaces. Blake felt no triumph, no peace, just the cold, heavy finality of it all. Wordlessly, he began to gather his things. From behind him, Mira's voice came once more, faint and raw. "Blake, please, not like this. We still have a chance. Goodbye, Mira." He didn't look back. He walked out, with Damien trailing just behind. Outside, the fall wind blew sharply, scattering golden leaves across the courthouse steps. Somewhere, a baby who wasn't his was likely sleeping soundly, blissfully unaware of the wreckage his existence had unearthed. "You okay?" Damien asked as they reached the car. "No," Blake said truthfully, catching them both off guard. "But I will be." "Want to grab a drink? Talk it over?" Blake shook his head, pulling out his keys. "Not tonight. I just need to—" "Blake!" Mira's voice cut through the air like a blade. She was hurrying toward them, heels clicking frantically on the pavement, mascara streaking down her cheeks. She stopped just a few feet away, desperation in her voice. "Please don't walk away from this. We can rebuild. Go to therapy. Try again." "There's nothing left to fix," Blake said quietly. "The court ruled. It's over." "The hell it is!" she snapped, loud enough to draw glances from the small crowd outside. You don't erase 5 years of marriage with one court decision. What about our plans? Everything we dreamed of? The home we were going to buy? The kids we wanted? Blake didn't blink. All of that ended the day you slept with Trevor, he said. His composure only seemed to rattle her further. And as for family, you've already got one. He won't help, she burst out, her words rushing past her defenses. I called Trevor again yesterday. He told me to stop contacting him, said he'd file a restraining order if I didn't back off. He won't even admit his own son exists. And now I'm supposed to do this alone? And why exactly is that my responsibility? Blake asked. Because you're not like him, she pleaded, stepping closer. You're better. You're kind. You would have been an incredible father. Stop. Blake raised a hand to halt her words. Just stop. I'm not a backup plan, Mira. I'm not here to raise someone else's child because the man you chose betrayed you too. That's not what I meant. But it is, he interrupted. You thought you could lie, keep the truth hidden, and still hang on to your comfortable life with your dependable husband. But you can't have it both ways. The man she had once relied on was gone. She'd had enough of the charade. No more lies, no more pretending, no more of him. Tears traced silent paths down her face. Don't do this, he begged, desperation cracking his voice. I love you. She stared at him, her words calm and final. No. Blake's expression didn't harden. It quieted. Not because he forgave her, but because he was done fighting. If love had ever really been there, you wouldn't have betrayed me. You wouldn't have kept everything hidden. What mattered most to you was the stability I gave you, the ease of our life. But that life? It was a lie. And it ends here. Her voice dropped, trembling. I'll do anything. I'll fix it, I swear. There's nothing left to repair. Blake turned toward his truck, hand already on the door. Go home, Mira. Your son needs you. Start fresh if you want. Just leave me out of it. You can't mean this. I can. And I do. His eyes held hers for the last time. Goodbye, Mira. He got in, started the engine, and pulled away. In the mirror, he saw Damien leading Mira back toward the courthouse, her body quaking with sobs. Blake felt nothing. The love he once had, the future they had planned, the trust he had offered, all of it had crumbled beyond saving. The drive blurred around him. Traffic lights changed, cars passed, but it all registered like static in the background. His thoughts cycled endlessly through snapshots of their past, laughing in the kitchen, late-night talks, quiet moments that had once felt like love. Had it ever been real? Or had the betrayal been there all along? His phone buzzed beside him. A message from Damien. She's with her sister. You sure you don't want that drink? Blake quickly typed, no thanks, dropped the phone onto the passenger seat, and kept going. He didn't need a drink. He needed space, room to process what had just unraveled in that courtroom. When he reached his apartment, the place was sunk in shadows. The stillness inside pressed on him like weight. He loosened his tie, poured 2 fingers of whiskey into a glass, and stood at the window, watching the fading sunlight disappear behind the city skyline. Somewhere out there, Mira was probably still crying, still hoping he'd come back. Somewhere, a child that shared none of his blood was being cradled by the same woman who had tried to trap him in lies. But it was done. The courtroom fight was behind him. The marriage had been formally ended. He was free now, free from her tears, her manipulations, the burden she had tried to place on his shoulders. That freedom, though, had come at the cost of everything he once believed in. 3 months passed. Fall turned to winter. Blake sat in the corner office at Harrington Construction, examining blueprints for their latest luxury build. Under his leadership, the firm had flourished. They specialized in high-end developments now. Success had become his answer to everything he'd lost. It was proof that he didn't need Mira to move forward. His intercom buzzed. Lily, his assistant, sounded tentative. "Mr. Harrington? There's a call on line 1. It's First Citibank." "Put it through," he said, expecting a business matter, likely project funding. "Is this Blake Harrington?" a formal voice asked. "Speaking." "This is Lana Clayton from First Citibank's loan department. I'm contacting you about a personal loan application submitted by Mira Winslow, formerly Harrington. She listed you as a reference." Blake's grip on the phone tightened, his jaw locking. "I never agreed to be a reference for Mira Winslow," he said with clipped precision. "She listed you as her ex-husband who could confirm her employment history." "Let me stop you there," he cut in. "I don't want to be involved in anything concerning Mira Winslow. Don't call me about her again." He ended the call with more force than necessary. Whatever peace he'd found that morning evaporated instantly. The plans in front of him lost focus as old memories pushed back into his mind. His phone buzzed again. Another unfamiliar number, but local. "Mr. Harrington?" A man's voice this time. "Jasper McMillan, McMillan Real Estate. I'm reaching out regarding a rental application submitted by Mira Winslow." "No." Blake's voice was cold steel. "Whatever she's told you, whatever she's attempting, I'm not involved. Don't contact me again." 3 calls, all before noon, after months of silence. Why now? Then a text from Damien offered the answer. "Heads up. Trevor filed a restraining order against Mira last week. She's been showing up at his office demanding child support. His wife found out. Looks like the whole thing's about to explode." Blake stared at the message, a humorless chuckle escaping. Finally, karma was making its rounds. Both Mira and her lover were starting to feel the consequences. The intercom lit up again. "Mr. Harrington?" Lily's voice was cautious now. "There's someone here who says he needs to speak with you. He says it's urgent." "Who is it?" "He says his name is Trevor Whitman, from Morgan Accounting." The name hit him like a blunt force. Blake's hands balled into tight fists against the edge of his desk, the skin over his knuckles turning pale. For a moment, he considered summoning security to remove the man. But no, better to face this head-on. "Send him in." Moments later, the door eased open with a groan. Trevor Whitman entered, tall, poised, wearing a sharp charcoal suit that clung to him like authority itself. His dark complexion was offset by a soft blue silk tie. This was the man who had torn Blake's marriage apart. The man who'd fathered a child with Blake's wife, then disappeared from the fallout. "Harrington," Trevor said, his tone uncertain, stripped of the usual corporate swagger. "Thanks for agreeing to see me." "Get to the point," Blake replied coldly, not bothering to stand. "Why are you here?" "It's about Mira." "Then this discussion is finished." Blake turned back to the architectural plans on his desk, shutting the door on the conversation as swiftly as it had opened. "Wait!" Trevor took a hesitant step forward, voice cracking with urgency. "She's not doing well. She's been harassing me, showing up at my office, my house, calling my firm, spreading lies that I abandoned my child." "Your child," Blake said, voice frigid. "The one you refuse to admit exists?" "I didn't ask for this," Trevor said, rubbing at his brow, his composure unraveling. "It happened once. One night. We were drinking, celebrating after the Morgan deal. I didn't know she was married. Don't lie to me." Blake stood, his imposing 6'2" frame rising like a storm cloud. "You worked in the same damn building. You saw the ring. You knew. I'm not excusing it, but I'm not ready to be a father. I have my own life, my wife." "Your wife?" Blake's eyes darkened with something more than rage. "So you're married too?" Trevor swallowed hard, Adam's apple jumping. He gave a stiff nod. 10 years. We have 2 kids. If this gets out— "So you didn't just betray me?" Blake cut in sharply. "You betrayed her too." A bitter, joyless laugh escaped Blake. "And what now? You think I'm going to clean up your mess? Silence Mira on your behalf? I was hoping you might talk to her. Help her see reason. Reason? Blake rounded the desk and closed the gap between them. You want her to see that you're too much of a coward to own up to your own child? That you're hiding from the disaster you created? It's not that black and white. No, Blake said, his voice a venom-laced whisper. It's that clear. He leaned in. You're a liar, a coward, a cheating bastard. You slept with another man's wife, got her pregnant, and now you're trying to disappear. Did I miss anything? Please, Harrington, Trevor said, raising his palms in a plea. If this comes out, I lose everything. My marriage, my job. Good. The word landed like a gunshot. Let your wife learn who you really are. Let your company see the man they've entrusted. Let the whole world watch you crumble. You're really just going to let her destroy everything I have? You mean the way you helped destroy my life? Blake strode to the door and pulled it open. What goes around comes around. Now get the hell out before I help you out. Trevor didn't wait. He turned and rushed out, nearly colliding with Lily outside. She glanced in, concern etching her face. Is everything all right, Mr. Harrington? I'm fine, he said, straightening his tie, though his hand still trembled faintly. Hold all calls for the rest of the afternoon. But the encounter had cracked something open. Emotions long buried, anger, sorrow, memories dulled by time, rose to the surface. He left work early, steering through streets he hadn't traveled in years, past familiar neighborhoods, past the house that once symbolized a future. A for sale sign stood crooked in the lawn. The windows stared back at him, vacant. Another fragment of his past, dissolving. He remembered painting the nursery, shelving tools in the garage, sketching renovation plans they never got to finish. All of it ruined by betrayal. His phone rang. Damien again. Ava just called, Damien said immediately. Mira's sister says things have taken a serious turn. It's bad. Not my concern. I figured you'd say that. But you should know. She lost her job last month. Had a breakdown during a meeting, right when they brought up the Morgan account. She fell apart in front of everyone. Blake's grip on the steering wheel tightened. Still not my problem. She's hanging by a thread. Can't pay rent. Struggling to afford formula for the baby. Trevor isn't helping. And now his wife found the emails. It's all about to collapse. They're both finally facing consequences. Yeah, Blake murmured. There was a pause before Damien continued. Ava wanted to know if you'd even consider... No. That was the final word. Her choices were made, and now she had to deal with the consequences. A full week went by before he saw her again, just as he was finishing up for the day. Mira was slouched in her aging Honda, parked alone in the lot. Her forehead rested against the steering wheel. Even from several cars away, he could see her shoulders quaking with silent sobs. The car was in poor shape, its paint dulled by grime, one taillight fractured, a stark contrast to the pristine, meticulously maintained vehicle she used to drive, back when things still mattered to her. For a brief instant, old memories slipped through. He recalled her crying on their wedding day, tears of joy, and later, crying again when she told him she was pregnant, overflowing with happiness. But none of it had been real. Every tear, every smile had been used to manipulate him. Without hesitation, he climbed into his truck and drove away, refusing to look back. The next morning, an email appeared in his inbox. It was from Mira. Blake, I imagine you hate me. You have every reason to. I destroyed everything. But I'm desperate. I've lost my job and I can't afford rent. Trevor won't even admit our son is his. I have no one. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I wouldn't even ask for that. But I'm begging you. If even a piece of the man I loved still exists, please help. Not for me, for our child. He didn't choose any of this. I've lost it all. My work, my place to live, my dignity. But what I miss most is you. You were the best part of my life, and I threw that away for something worthless. Please, Blake. I'm barely staying afloat. Mira. He deleted it without replying, but her words lingered, haunting him not out of sympathy, but because her desperation felt, in some grim way, earned. She had shattered a stable marriage for a fling with someone who now wanted nothing to do with her, or the child they'd created together. His phone buzzed. A text from Ava. She's losing everything, Blake. The complex gave her 30 days. The car's next. I know what she did was awful, but she's barely holding on. The baby's the only thing keeping her going. His response was curt. She should have thought about that before she cheated. The typing dots blinked for a second. Then Ava replied. She thinks about it every day. She holds that baby and cries herself to sleep, knowing she destroyed the only man who truly loved her. I've never seen someone fall this far. He fired back instantly. That's her cross to bear, not mine. Ava didn't back off. The Blake I knew had a heart. His answer was the end of it. The Blake you knew died the day your sister betrayed him. Don't text me again. He powered off his phone, but her words didn't leave him. Compassion? Where was Mira's compassion when she spent months deceiving him, when she was sneaking off to be with a married man? Where was her concern for the man she claimed to love? The following morning, his phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. A composed, professional voice greeted him. Mr. Harrington, this is Penelope Morgan from Clearview Apartments. Ms. Mira Winslow listed you as— Let me guess, he cut in coldly. A reference? Yes, sir, she confirmed. She indicated you could verify— I can verify something, he snapped. Mira Winslow is dishonest. You'd be wise not to trust her. That's all you need to know. He hung up, hands shaking, the rage rising again. How dare she keep involving him in her mess, still using his name like it meant something, like she hadn't obliterated every right to it. A month later, he spotted her at Whitman's Market. The change in her was staggering. She looked nothing like the poised, lively woman he'd once married. Her clothes were worn thin, her hair pulled back into a limp ponytail, her face hollowed with fatigue. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. Her cart held only the bare essentials: formula, diapers, generic food items. The baby sat quietly in the front seat, cooing softly. Blake avoided looking at him. They locked eyes in the produce section. For a moment, everything went still. Then she looked away, swiping at her face with a trembling hand. Blake, she said softly. Her voice carried easily in the quiet aisle. I didn't expect to see you here. Don't, he said, already turning to go, but her voice caught him again. I got your message. There was no need to clarify. He knew she meant the apartment call. Her next words came slowly, faltering. They turned me down. Every place I applied to has. Not my problem. I know. She attempted a smile, but it broke into something brittle and sad. None of it's your problem anymore, is it? Not even me. Not the baby. Not even the fact that we're days away from losing everything. You're right. He turned to face her squarely. None of this is on me. These were your choices, Mira. You're the one who lied, the one who cheated. And now that the consequences are finally here, you want sympathy? He shook his head. Keep playing the victim if it helps you sleep. Her voice quivered. You think I'm pretending? Just look at me, Blake. Look at what's left of my life. I am looking, he replied coldly. And what I see is exactly what you earned. Tears streamed down her face. I know this is my fault. Every single bit of it. Her eyes shifted toward the child beside her. But not his. He had nothing to do with any of this. Blake barely glanced at the baby. Then maybe you should take that up with his actual father. He turned and began to walk away. Oh, wait, he added over his shoulder. That guy doesn't want either of you, does he? He abandoned his cart without a second thought. He didn't need to see her collapse, didn't need to carry the burden of her mistakes. She had built this life. Let her live in it. That night, Damien called. No small talk. Trevor's wife found out. Sounds like Mira finally told her everything. His marriage is done. He's been pulled from work, some investigation about misconduct. Can't say I'm surprised. Blake's voice was flat. Figures. Still won't take responsibility for the kid, though, Damien continued. His wife's going all in. She's trying to get the house, the cars, even his retirement plan. There was a pause. Mira's hit bottom, man. Ava's moving in with her next week to help out. She's got nothing left. Not even rent money. That's her mess to clean up, Blake said quietly. Yeah, I figured, Damien replied. Just thought you'd want to know karma's finally doing its job. He hesitated. Oh, and Ava asked about you. Wanted to know if you're seeing anyone. Tell her to mind her own business. I did, Damien said with a sigh. Look, I know what Mira did was inexcusable, but seeing her like this, she fell apart the moment she chose betrayal, Blake interrupted. Everything after that was just the fallout. A week later, Blake was leaving work when he spotted a figure on a bench near the exit. Mira. She looked worse than before. Gaunt, exhausted, clothes draping her frame like they'd given up trying to fit. The baby was sleeping in a carrier at her feet. When she saw him, she stood, but didn't move closer. She just stood there, arms crossed tightly as if trying to hold herself together, tears silently tracking down her cheeks. Why are you here? His tone was hard. I needed to see you, she stammered. To apologize. For everything. You were the best thing in my life, and I threw it away. She gestured helplessly toward herself. This is what I live with now. Every day. Blake didn't reply. I get it, she whispered. This is karma. She wiped her eyes. Trevor won't even acknowledge his own son. His wife's tearing him apart in court. She's getting everything. The house, the vehicles, even his pension. She reported him, and now he's suspended. She gave a hollow, bitter laugh. He lost everything, just like I did. Sooner or later, the truth catches up to everyone. She glanced down at the baby, still sleeping peacefully. You know what breaks me the most? Her voice was almost too soft to hear. It's knowing I had someone who truly loved me, who would have been an amazing father, and I threw it all away, for nothing. One stupid decision. And now I've lost everything that ever mattered. Blake stared at her. The only thing he felt was a quiet, cold sense of justice. Are you done? Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. I know I deserve this, all of it. I wish I could go back. Choose better. Choose you. But you didn't, he said flatly. You chose betrayal. You chose lies, and now you get to live with the outcome. I know. She wiped at her face, though the tears kept falling. I just needed you to understand. I see it now. Everything I lost. Everything I destroyed. You were the best man I've ever known, and I'll carry the regret of losing you for the rest of my life. Don't waste your breath, he said sharply. Go home, Mira. Go stay with your sister. Whatever life you've got left, salvage it if you can, but leave me out of it from here on. Blake's tone was steady, resolute. No anger, just an unshakable finality. That's it, Mira. Goodbye. Without waiting for a response, he turned and walked to his truck. He didn't look back once. Her sobs followed him, but faded with each footstep. Above the skyline, the sun disappeared behind the city's edge, casting brilliant streaks of fire and gold across the clouds. Morning would come again, as it always did. But for Mira, daylight brought no relief. The fallout from her choices remained, silent and unmoving. So did the guilt. So did the shame that clung to her like a second skin. Half a year slipped by. Blake now sat in the living room of a sharp, modern home across town, nothing like the warm, lived-in house he'd once shared with Mira. His phone buzzed with a message from Damien. Thought you'd want to know. Mira's still holed up at Ava's, waiting tables, barely scraping by. Oh, and Trevor? The divorce finalized. Lost everything. The house, the cars, even a chunk of his retirement. He's back at his parents' place. Justice hadn't taken a break. Blake stared at the screen, then set the phone down. No reply was needed. That chapter of his life had ended. What once tore him apart now felt like an old wound, closed, faded, no longer tender. He'd built a new beginning, and this time it was solid. His business thrived. His home was truly his own. The path ahead was clear, unshadowed by lies or betrayal. Mira, though, carried her choices like a stone tied to her soul. Each glance at her son reminded her of what she'd destroyed. And at night, lying alone in a borrowed bed, in a house that wasn't hers, she remembered. Not just what she had done, but what she could never get back. That was justice, the kind that stayed. Our story has come to an end. What do you think about this story? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed the way I tell stories, head over to my channel and check out my other videos. May the force be with you. See you soon, my friend.